Imagine a world where sexual pleasure doesn't exist. How would our lives be different? This isn't just a random thought, it's an intriguing question that could lead us into a myriad of fascinating discussions about the essence of human life. We're about to embark on a journey, a thought experiment if you will, exploring the possible implications of a world devoid of sexual pleasure. We'll delve into the biological, psychological, and societal aspects of this hypothetical scenario. From a biological perspective, how would the absence of sexual pleasure impact reproduction and the survival of our species? Psychologically speaking, what would the effects be on our mental well-being, relationships, and overall life satisfaction? And on a societal level, how would our cultures, norms, and laws evolve in response to this significant shift in human experience? So fasten your seatbelts, open your minds, and prepare for an intellectual adventure. Let's dive into this fascinating thought experiment. On the biological front, sexual pleasure has a key role in the survival of species, including humans. This statement may seem obvious, but let's unpack it a bit. In nature, everything has a purpose. The biological function of sex, at its most fundamental level, is reproduction. That's how species propagate and ensure their survival. But let's face it, if the act of procreation was purely mechanical or devoid of any pleasure, would creatures, including humans, be as inclined to participate in it? Here's where sexual pleasure comes into the picture. It serves as a powerful biological incentive, enticing individuals to engage in the act of procreation. It's nature's way of making sure that species, including our own, continue to reproduce and thus survive. Now let's imagine a world where sex isn't pleasurable. Suddenly that biological incentive is gone. Would humans still engage in sex for the sake of reproduction? Perhaps, but without the draw of pleasure, it's likely that the frequency of such encounters would decrease significantly. This decline could have profound implications on population growth. Today, the global human population is well over 7 billion. But without the biological incentive of sexual pleasure, this number could dwindle over time. Now, you might be thinking, well, wouldn't that help with overpopulation? Possibly, but it's not that simple. A declining population could lead to its own set of challenges. For instance, there would be fewer young people to support the older generation, potentially leading to societal and economic problems. Furthermore, not all species reproduce at the same rate as humans. Some species, especially those already endangered, might struggle to reproduce at all without the incentive of pleasure, possibly leading to their extinction. All in all, the biological implications of a world without sexual pleasure could be far-reaching. It's not just about the act itself, but about the ripple effects it could have on population dynamics and survival of species. So on a biological level, the absence of sexual pleasure could lead to a serious decline in population. Now let's consider the psychological implications. Imagine a world where sexual pleasure is absent. It's a concept that, for many, may seem foreign and even slightly uncomfortable to contemplate. But bear with me, as this thought experiment could yield some fascinating insights into our psychological well-being and interpersonal relationships. Sexual pleasure is not merely a physical experience, it's a profound psychological event that can significantly impact our mental health. The brain, being our largest sexual organ, releases a cocktail of chemicals during sexual activity, including dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. These chemicals are known to boost mood, reduce stress, and foster a sense of well-being, contributing to our overall mental health. Now imagine if this source of pleasure and stress relief were to disappear. The absence of these chemical releases could lead to increased stress levels and a potential decline in mental health. As sexual pleasure also serves as a natural antidepressant, its absence could exacerbate feelings of depression and anxiety. Moving on to relationships, sexual pleasure plays a pivotal role in bonding between partners. The act of making love is more than just a physical act. It's an intimate experience that fosters emotional connection and mutual understanding. The pleasure derived from such acts serves as a bonding agent, strengthening relationships and promoting a sense of unity. But what if this bonding agent was no longer present? Without sexual pleasure, relationships could potentially become strained. The intimate connection that comes from shared sexual pleasure could be lost, leading to potential misunderstandings, feelings of disconnect, and even relationship breakdowns. Moreover, the desire for sexual pleasure often serves as a motivator for people to seek and maintain romantic relationships. Without this motivator, individuals may be less inclined to pursue relationships, potentially leading to increased loneliness and isolation. Without the bonding and stress relief that comes from sexual pleasure, our mental health and relationships could suffer. This is not to say that sex is the only factor in mental health or relationships, but it certainly plays a considerable role. So, the absence of sexual pleasure could have far-reaching psychological implications that we might not have considered. But what about society as a whole? How would it be affected? Sexual pleasure, whether we acknowledge it or not, is a significant driving force behind many societal norms and behaviors. It's woven into the fabric of our interactions, our media, our art, and even our politics. Without it, our society would likely look very different. Consider, for instance, the social interactions shaped by the pursuit or the promise of sexual pleasure. Nightlife, dating, and even the way we dress are heavily influenced by this invisible force. Remove it from the equation, and we might see a shift towards more platonic relationships rooted in shared interests and emotional compatibility. The dating landscape could transform into a space where personality, intellect, and emotional connection are the primary focus. Gender norms too could be upended in a world without sexual pleasure. Much of our current understanding of gender is tied to sexual roles and expectations. Without the pleasure aspect of sex, these roles could lose their relevance, leading to a society where gender is less about biology and more about individual identity and expression. Cultural practices around the world are also deeply intertwined with sexual pleasure. Many rituals, celebrations, and traditions have roots in fertility and sexuality. A world without sexual pleasure could see these practices evolve or even disappear, making way for new traditions centered around other aspects of human experience. Furthermore, the absence of sexual pleasure could also have implications on population control. Since the primary motivation behind sex would be procreation, we might witness a decrease in unplanned pregnancies and a more controlled population growth. In the realms of art and media, where sex and sexual pleasure often serve as powerful themes and motivators, we might see a shift towards exploring other facets of human existence. Stories might focus more on intellectual and emotional connections, on individual growth and human triumph. So, a world without sexual pleasure could drastically reshape our society. It's a fascinating thought experiment, one that makes us question the very foundations of our societal constructs. It makes us wonder about the complex and often unseen ways in which our behaviors and norms are influenced by our biological drives. So, we've looked at the potential biological, psychological, and societal implications of a world without sexual pleasure. It's been quite a journey. Let's take a moment to bring it all together and highlight the key takeaways. In the realm of biology, we discussed how the absence of sexual pleasure could drastically alter the course of human evolution. Without the incentive of pleasure, the drive to procreate might reduce significantly. This could result in a decrease in population growth rates and even the potential for certain genetic traits to disappear over time. Moving on to the psychological implications, we explored how sexual pleasure is not just about procreation, but also forms a crucial part of human connection and intimacy. Without it, relationships could become more transactional, potentially leading to a shift in how we form bonds and understand love. The absence might also result in a shift in mental health trends, with the potential for increased feelings of alienation and isolation. Next, we delved into the societal implications. We acknowledged how the pleasure associated with sex has shaped our culture, our art, and even our laws. Without it, there could be a profound shift in societal norms and values. The way we view relationships, marriage, and even our own bodies could undergo a dramatic transformation. Lastly, we touched upon the economic ramifications. Industries such as entertainment, healthcare, and even tourism, which have elements tied to sex and sexuality, could see significant changes. While it's impossible to know for sure, it's clear that sexual pleasure plays a significant role in our lives and society. Its absence could lead to a domino effect, altering various aspects of life as we know it. But these are all hypotheticals, and our world is shaped by much more than just one factor. As we move forward, let's continue to appreciate the complexity and diversity of human experience, and remember the significant role that pleasure, in all its forms, plays in our lives. This thought experiment has taken us on a fascinating journey. It's an exploration that's drawn us into uncharted territories of biology, psychology, and society. As we've seen, the pleasure associated with sex isn't just an incidental perk, it's a fundamental aspect of our lives that shapes how we interact, how we bond, and to a certain extent how we evolve as a species. It's an integral thread in the complex tapestry of human existence. It drives us towards intimacy, fosters deep connections, and yes, it even keeps the wheels of human evolution turning. Imagine just for a moment a world devoid of this pleasure. It's not merely about the absence of physical joy, it's about the profound ripple effects this could have on our relationships, our societies, and our very concept of humanity. Perhaps it's time we appreciate the pleasure principle a bit more in our lives. Thank you for joining us on this thought-provoking journey. Until next time, keep pondering the world around you.